On today's show, I have a special guest joining us from around the world in Australia. His name is Lewis Huckstep. Lewis is a fellow mindset, leadership coach, and podcast host. At the young age of 22, Lewis had already owned 3 gyms and was making 6 figures. He endured the struggles of stress and no sleep, so much so that he was finally inspired to find his purpose. His purpose is to heal and improve the consciousness of mankind, and his mission is to empower 1 million people to heal and create a life that inspires them. Welcome, Lewis.
Thank you for having me. Beautiful.
Recording in progress.
Beautiful way of speaking, and it was a beautiful introduction, and pleasure to be here. Looking forward to chatting.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. So I'm gonna just dive right in, if you don't mind. And on one of your recent reels on Instagram, you asked listeners to try to look at their triggered partners in a different light, to look and to listen to the emotional age that they're acting at that time, and to respond to them accordingly. For example, if they're acting like a 5-year-old, indeed respond to them as if you were talking to a 5-year-old child, with kindness, love, and of course, healthy boundaries. While I 100% agree that when someone is triggered, their nervous system does take them into a different place and a different time. And I thank you for pointing that out. Also, though, it's a very hard task to complete, which you also point out, especially if you're also triggered. How do you suggest finding a good balance if one person in the relationship finds himself caretaking for the triggered one all the time, but doesn't find the same compassion in return when they're triggered?
Beautiful question. Look, for people that haven't heard me, I generally will zoom out and then zoom in a little bit, just so you get a bit of context on what we're talking about. So zooming out quickly, whenever you're triggered, it's revealing something you haven't worked through, whether it's a trauma, a limiting belief, an egocentric version of yourself that doesn't want to be wrong and it's been challenged. So that's why I say your triggers are your gifts, because they reveal where there's resistance or where there's a wound where you can actually do some healing. So that's the first thing to be aware of. So whenever you are triggered, it's nothing external, it's all internal. Whatever someone does is their stuff, how you react and respond is your stuff. So if you're blaming anyone, especially your partner, for how you feel and how you react, you're giving your power away. Someone could say anything, the most horrible, condescending, nasty things to someone. And if there was no wounds in that area or nothing there was no resistance there and there was no truth to it, then you would have no reaction. So there's words only hurt you to the level you believe them yourself. That's from Peter Crone. And that's the first part of that. So then the second part is, okay, well, what happens when you get triggered? In a relationship, you would be triggered more than anywhere else. Why? Because they see more sides to you. Because like we've just met each other on this camera for about sort of 5-10 minutes. We're only going to see a certain side of each other, right? We're not going to see each other when we're sick, when we haven't had enough sleep, when the washing machine breaks, when we're having some financial pressure, and you see all those different iterations of yourself. So you do get your buttons pushed more in a relationship just because they're around you more than anyone else, depending, well, for majority of relationships anyways. But to then zoom in on your question. So when you do get triggered, you regress back to the person you were when that event happened. So if you're 5 years old and your dad, your mom, your siblings made you feel like you weren't enough, you weren't successful enough, smart enough, etc., whatever the enough wasn't, that was the pain you went through, and that can be quite traumatic. And there's a great book behind me. It's called You're Not Broken by Dr. Sarah Woodhouse. And she talks about the formula for traumatic events, or what trauma is. And it's just the perceived, and keyword is perceived, threat with high levels of powerlessness to defend yourself and overwhelm. So again, something that's traumatic to a 5-year-old is different to a 25-year-old. So when you get triggered, you're going to regress back to that 5-year-old self. Now, that is the beautiful opportunity, because in that opportunity, that's when you can heal. A lot of healing is done through being seen, heard, loved for who you are in that moment. Because when you were 5 years old, when you weren't enough, you weren't being loved back then. So that's why you will do most growth inside your intimate relationship. But there's a caveat to this. There's a balance to this, because this is my belief anyways, and this is what I sort of recommend with my content and with my clients and myself. Look, people can't be held accountable to things they're not conscious of. So if you're not conscious of what we're talking about, you're doing the best of what you have, and everyone's doing the best of what they have. So this is what I believe. once you become aware of what I'm talking about, that when you're triggered, it's your stuff, it's not your partner. They're just revealing what's already inside of you. And then that's given you the opportunity to heal through it. If you then choose to not do the work on whatever has been brought to the surface, then you're choosing to hold on to this limitation. And therefore, you're choosing for that limitation to affect the relationship ongoing. But again, you need that consciousness first, right? I'll use short example. I triggered my partner, my beautiful fiance, Georgia. She was making me dinner. She was making me some eggs for a burger, and the burger, it was meant to be a fried egg. I came up and it looked like scrambled eggs. And the egg, I'm like, babe, what's going on with this egg? And she got very triggered because I had revealed that her stepdad, when she was younger, she was never enough. She always effed everything up. I don't know if I can swear on this, but she effed everything up. She was never enough. She was a failure. He always made her feel like she wasn't enough who she was as a woman for anything, for the cooking or homework or anything. And the egg and what I said, like, what have you done to this egg, brought that to the surface. And anyways, she was triggered, then she triggered me, and we got into a bit of a disagreement. I do recommend when you're in the wound, when you're in the trigger, don't try solve it. Don't try to do it then. It's not the time and place. When you're in it, to answer this again to your question, when you're triggered with each other, either you or partner or both, best thing to do is to hold space, to regulate your emotions. I do breath work, slow down your breathing, slow down that nervous system, get out of sympathetic, get into parasympathetic, and really slow down. And do your best. Easier said than done sometimes, especially when you're really triggered, but do your best to breathe, do your best to help your partner feel seen, loved, and safe. Then when the dust is settled and you're back to neutral, then you can go into doing the work. And literally that example that I'm referring to with my beautiful fiance, I asked her, I said, baby, like, how are you feeling now? Do you feel safe now? Do you feel okay now? Do you feel like you're in a safe space now? Beautiful. I said, awesome. So once the dust had settled, I said, baby, look, again, something obviously came to the surface and something of mine came to the surface. I've got my ways of healing because I've done my work and I know how I can do my healing. I've got my strategies and that's what I do for my clients. So I said, baby, what's your way of healing? How do you go and heal through this? Do you get a therapist? Do you get a coach? Do you do meditation? Do you do a plant ceremony? What is your way of healing? Because if she then chooses not to heal through whatever came to the surface, the same thing's going to get triggered, whether a month, a week, a year, 5 years later. And it's not going to be the same. It will be worse because there'll be the build-up from the previous one. And if you do that enough times over a long enough period of time, relationships bottle up, and they just have these huge explosions. And that's what most people do in their relationships. So that your partner is not taking accountability to do their work, I believe that they're choosing not to respect the relationship. They're choosing to honestly ruin the relationship. So if your partner is conscious of the work and they're choosing not to do it, I believe you're with the wrong person. And I believe you either hold them accountable, set those boundaries. And again, there's a line of like, don't set a boundary that they can never be triggered because everyone's going to. It's very natural and normal. But it's, for me, if they're choosing not to then heal through it, that's the boundary for me. That for me is the red flag. And if my partner was to do it, or me, and the two-way street, if I wasn't working on my stuff, I would hope my partner would have the self-love and respect to hold me accountable to my stuff. And if I chose to not do the work, eventually she would say, look, this is not for us. So long-winded answer to your question, but I hope that answered your question.
That did answer my question, and actually segues into my next question, which you kind of covered, which is my husband does get often triggered with dirty laundry on the floor, and then I ask him, can you put your dirty laundry in the hamper? Like, why is this so hard? And that really triggers him, kind of like your fiance got triggered by the egg. Like, for me, it's like, what are you talking about? Just put your laundry in the hamper. But for him, it's totally something much bigger. But again, it goes back to the responsibility of that person trying to investigate and see, why is this so upsetting? And I do believe that males especially have a little bit of a harder time investigating that. For females, the trend seems to be like, we're kind of like mystery solvers. We want to solve the mystery of like, what is happening with him? And let me try to fix it. And I do believe that some males do that as well. But when it comes to these like emotional boundaries and like, or walls, I feel like I'm definitely more invested in being like, what is happening in there? And let's solve this problem. What are you going to do? What is your process? Like you were saying with your fiance. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think that is? Do you agree with this trend that males seem to be a little bit more resistant with investigating why they're being triggered, and then also resistant in trying to solve the problem or try to, move forward in a healthy way.
Yeah, well, I think I've never really asked that angle on this topic. I believe the feminine essence is very nurturing, caregiver, lover, nurturer, and that can be both male and female. I'm quite a feminine man. I've got a lot of feminine healing energy, hence I'm a coach, hence I do a lot of sort of inner work for my clients. So I have a lot of that, which comes from the pain of the toxic masculine. So like, I believe it's more of an energetic thing rather than a gender thing. That's just sort of my view on that. And yeah, like the feminine wants to connect. They want to nurture. They want to love. And if you go too far on this, you become that person who always tries to want to fix people. You want to literally date the person that's broken to try to fix their problems. And there's nothing wrong with that. If it's unbalanced, if it becomes unbalanced though, and they're not doing their work, back to the first question, I believe that's a battle you're never going to win. You're never going to win that fight. So you can drag a horse forward, you can't make it drink. You can't drag someone to the altar. They need to walk themselves to the altar, and they need to want to do the work. So look, I agree to your point. I would use the word feminine rather than women and male, but again, well, generally speaking, I don't know the actual data on it, but I believe from what I've seen and what I understand, majority of women are feminine driven and majority of men are masculine driven, and we have both energies within both of us, the yin and yang. So yeah, the feminine generally wants to nurture, love, care, provide, etc., and the man wants to just work, achieve. Okay, and they don't want to then look under the hood and say, okay, well, why am I triggered? And then there's the social conditioning on the top, which I had a lot of that. Emotions are weak, that men don't cry and you got to be tough and you don't want to show those emotions, where I completely disagree with that now, where I believe vulnerability is actually true strength, because it actually takes the strength to lower the walls, to show your vulnerabilities. That for me takes true strength. It's easier to put the wall up and shut people off. So that was a good reframe for me on my journey. But yeah, I agree to your point. But yeah, I'd probably just insert the word feminine rather than woman for me. But yeah, the same, I guess, rules apply that we both have our stuff. Both people need to be willing to do their work. Can you both help each other? Of course. Like I remember quite recently, I had quite a big personal challenge for me with my family. There were some red flags that were popping up. Me and my fiancé are getting ready to have children, and there were some red flags that were popping up with my family, with their beliefs and their things that I just wasn't okay with, and something they said and did like really hurt me, and I was like, I was really angry. I was like really ready to fight, metaphorically. And I called my partner, and she was just so beautiful and loving and nurturing for me to, I guess, soothe me and to get me into a right headspace. And then sometimes I do that for her, and then sometimes she needs a little bit of challenge. We need both. You need both support and challenge to grow. And a great coach, a great partner, a great human being knows when to do both. They know when to push you harder. They know when to support you. It's like, hey, look, honey, you're triggered. I'm here for you. Feel love. That's more the support. But then there's the challenge of, okay, look, you're now, with dust is settled, you're regulated now. Now it's on you. It's on you now. It's no one else's. If you choose not to work through this, you're choosing to keep this. So that's where you sort of play the dance, and that's a dance that's not always easy to do.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you when it comes to male and female energy, because I definitely carry, I think, more male energy within my personal relationship with my husband. It's just, I don't know, that's just how the cookie's crumbling with us. So thank you for pointing that out, and I do agree with you. So you talk about maybe this person isn't right for you at this time. However, there is a whole bunch of people out there who are married with kids. And unfortunately, it's not as easy to walk away from that type of a relationship. And a lot of people don't want to, because they desperately want to save their family. So what is your advice or thoughts on that?
Look, take it as a grain of salt from a 26-year-old who has no kids. So just frame that. Like, I'm not in that position. But look, this is the way I believe it. It's like you've got to, the only time in your life where you need to put other people's needs ahead of your own is when you have children, when they need to be fed, clothed, looked after. Like, it literally, if you weren't to do that and you didn't put their needs ahead of your own, we wouldn't survive. So there is that evolutionary instinct in us to do so. But there's obviously, again, there's balance to that. And if you're like, I literally just reposted a video of this, of someone who was speaking about this topic, about they're in a very conscious relationship and they were kind of like at a breaking point. Is it worth doing this? We can co-parent really well. We've got, our kids love us. It's like, it doesn't have to be the cliche, nasty way of ending. Like who's come up with that rule that it has to be like that? Why can't you get to a point where you say, hey, look, I love you, you love me. We're not in love with each other, but we have love for each other. We've had a beautiful relationship, beautiful experiences that we'll cherish forever. We have beautiful relationships with our kids. We are just not meant for each other on an intimate level, but let's do this in such a beautiful way, which puts our kids, well, puts our own needs first, because you do need to be selfish to be selfless. Depending on the age of the kids, obviously, this is, again, it's different for every situation. Have you got a house together, mortgage together, kids together? Like, it doesn't have to be the cliche, like it just turns to shit and it just blows up and you just like do all these nasty things to each other and you try to take the kids from each other. There's no reason why it has to be like that. That
totally
all
agree.
comes from ego, that comes from hurt, that comes from the shit you haven't healed through. So that sort of ties back to the original part of, that's just bringing up your triggers of, you need to be right, you need to win. Win what? Like, what are you trying to win? Like yeah, so for me, I guess my thoughts is like, the only way that would end in quotations badly is if your ego gets involved very heavily and you can't regulate and be, I guess, to quote, the better person and just do what's right, that's fair and equitable for the person. For the children, obviously, I would put their needs first to some level, depending on their age.
100%.
Well, that's right.
I was just agreeing with you. And to your point, from my own experience, my parents, they got divorced when I was 5, and my mom just basically was like, I'm done with your dad. Never talking to him again unless it's just arranging like how we're going to meet and switch. And that definitely hurt. I don't know why she did that. That's her own story. And then I have the other side of the story where my dad and his previous wife, they also got divorced, but they were always together even after the divorce, and both of their new significant others were always invited to the family parties, and that was lovely. His ex-wife was at my graduation party, and I love that. That's how it should be, I think. But to each their own. I don't know my mom's personal story and reasoning why. That's hers to tell. Okay, in one of my latest episodes called Losing Your Shit on Random People, I can relate to letting a younger part of myself come out and allow her to steer the ship. The same younger part that tends to come out over and over again. She's about 12 years old with a lot of attitude and back talk. I do feel terrible about those who are on the receiving end of this kind of, I don't want to say bratty 12-year-old, but yes, kind of bratty 12-year-old who's back talking and giving them attitude. What is your advice to those on the receiving end of random people that are clearly triggered out in public? Because we do want to hold our boundaries, that's clear, but we also want to have compassion for everyone else and for the good of the collective.
No, beautiful question. So, look, you were alluding to it, the video that you said I posted about looking at your partner as a 5-year-old. That's how I view people. Like, to help me, because I still get frustrated. I'm a human being, guys. I get triggered. I get frustrated. I'm a human being too. So something that's really helped me, from my coaching to my friends to my family to people that I bump into in public, is like, I just look at them as, this is just a 5-year-old. Like, how would you treat this 5-year-old if that's what they were doing to you? And it just sees things through a different lens, because that's what we are. We're just kids. Like, we're just in these meat suits with all this like consciousness that's either evolving or not. And so that's a frame I look through to help with. And again, I sound like a bit of a broken record, but it just circles back to the same thing. What someone does is their stuff. What that brings up in you is your stuff. Like, a little example. I was driving my car. We've got some sausage dogs. We're taking them to the park, and I was driving, and I was turning right at a set of lights, and there was this person on the right-hand side of me that was doing a U-turn, but they were going the adjacent way, and they were starting to do a U-turn through a red light, and I had a green light, so I started to like go to turn right. This person was like inching forward to do a U-turn through a red light, which would hit me, and I was like, what the F is this person doing? Right. And I looked in to see what's going on. I'm like, what's this person doing? And this lady with like the most pissed off, angry face was just giving me the finger. Like, she was just really, and it triggered me for like 2 seconds. I was like, okay, all right. that person, what would that person be going through for her to be like that? That's the first thing to go through. What has she been through? If I was to be in her shoes from the day she was born with the trauma, pain, parents, absence, cheating, whatever she's gone through in that moment for her to do that, would I do the same thing? Maybe not, but I would at least understand why she's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's other questions we do. Every trait that we perceive is a projection of ourselves. So we all do all traits. So for me, I would see that trait as, anger, frustration. So I ask myself, where have I been angry? Where have I been frustrated before? When have I been rude to someone before? And we've all done it. If I name any single trait, any single action, inaction, we've all done it. We've all been rude. We've all been nice. We've all been honest. We've all lied before. We've all done everything. So that perception of someone is a projection of me. So there's that cliche quote that your perception of me is a projection of you. So that perception that I had of her being rude, angry, frustrated, whatever you want to call that, that's just a piece of me that I've done that I haven't accepted if I was to get angry at it. And I caught myself, it took me literally 2 seconds. I said, thank you for giving me an opportunity to regulate myself. Thank you for that opportunity. I wish you love and healing. And I just went on with my day. But if I was, 5-10 years ago, I would have toot the horn, would have got angry, frustrated myself. Yeah, those are some lenses, that I look through. And there's, if you go down the Stoic rabbit hole, Ryan Holiday is a great author on Stoicism, and Marcus Aurelius, or one of the Stoics, in one of their quotes, like, when you meet, quote, bad people, like, understand that there are bad people out there. And I put quotations bad because there's judgment there, but I guess for the purpose of this conversation, there's nasty people out there. There's people that do, quote, wrong things, bad things,
Bad
and
actions.
they're mean. So when you bump into those people, like, to be expected, these are one of those people that I knew are out there. Thank you for coming into my life, challenging me to be better, challenging me to be calmer, challenging me to regulate, and giving me an opportunity to be a more balanced person. So those are just sort of frames that I look through to help me with that.
That's a great answer. And honestly, it gives me new perspective, because usually what I try to do is I bless them. I'm like, okay, God, divine, help them out right now. They obviously need some attention from you. But your addition to being thankful is something so great, because it is an opportunity for growth. It's like, oh, okay, I can regulate myself. I did regulate myself. Thank you. Thank you, person I don't know that's having a hard time, for giving me growth. Wonderful. Wonderfully said. Yay. Okay, so I want to try something kind of silly with you, if you're open to it. Would you be open to role playing? I'd really love to role play a situation that I already kind of mentioned before that happens a lot in my household. My husband gets triggered, and then I get triggered in return. So I think role playing is helpful, because then it kind of gets it in my mind and my body, and then it's easier to put into action when it's actually happening. You good with that?
First of all, I love role play. I do it with my team. I do it with my clients. And a lot of people hate role play. I love role play because it gets you to get into the flow of things, to actually hear an example of, like, how can you word things? How can someone articulate a message and get something across? So absolutely, I'm down for this. It sounds fun.
Okay. So I'm going to try in return to not get triggered and handle, you can, if you don't mind, you're going to pretend like you're my husband.
Beautiful.
And,
hello, darling.
Yeah. Hello. So again, the scene is he left his dirty laundry on the floor, and I'm going to get upset about it, or the dishes or something like that. And the reason why I get upset in return from his trigger about the cleanliness of the house, I know it goes back to my childhood. One, coming from my mom's house, my mom's home that I grew up in. She was overworked. She had 3 jobs. She barely had time to clean. So it wasn't the tidiest house. And my other family members would talk about it. And I could feel the stress of her with her job and the fact that her house wasn't the tidiest. On the other hand, for my dad's house, it was so spotless, and as well as my sister's. And if it wasn't, then usually yelling would happen and complaining would happen. So with my husband, I'm not clear about his trigger, but I think it may have something to do with that's similar to your fiance's triggers, like maybe not feeling like they are doing enough to get praise and approval from their loved ones. Okay, so here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Husband, can you please put your clothes in the hamper. I don't understand why the clothes are on the floor next to the hamper, but not in the hamper.
Cool. Am I acting triggered to this, or am I doing a healthy
You are
way?
definitely triggered because, yes, this always triggers him.
Am I allowed to swear on this? Can I
Yes.
throw an F-bomb in there?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be like, babe, I'm busy. I got so much on. Like, you do all this shit as well. Why are you being so fucking hard on me?
Because it's really annoying me. We talk about it all the time. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna go for a walk with the dog. I'll be back. Okay? Is that a good way to handle it, or what do you? No.
Yeah. Well, I guess
Time
depending
out.
it depends on the relationship. Obviously, I barely know yourself, so
That's true.
it depends on it. Like going back to again the first part about the consciousness. If you're both aware on it, it's so easy. Like the egg example with my partner. After the dust had settled, it's like, hey, baby, look. What happened then? Like, and I didn't have to tell her what happened. She's like, oh, I just got triggered. Something's come up. Where does that come from? So it's come from my stepdad. Like, she knows how to do it.
Right.
So if you're talking to someone, if I'm your husband and haven't got the awareness of it,
Exactly.
it's like, it can be a little bit challenging. So I might say something like, honey, thank you for being open and real with me and opening up to me. What I'd love to do, I'd love to schedule in some time and have just an honest heart-to-heart conversation, because there's something I'd love to get on the same page with you about. And that's where you might have the conversation around explaining and getting clear on triggers, and it's your own stuff and you're working on you. You want to be with someone who works on them. This comes back to expectations of the relationship. If you just like come out of nowhere today and you're this beautiful, conscious, divine person and you start holding him accountable to things he was like, what the fuck? Like this, what happened to yesterday? And like, so
Right.
I would probably, before you sort of like start to kind of integrate and use the work, it probably takes some check-ins and reevaluating expectations. What are our expectations when we get triggered? What are our expectations when we push each other's buttons? Because, honey, are you going to push my buttons? Of course. Am I going to push yours? Of course. How can we handle this in a really beautiful, healthy way and minimize the damage whenever we are triggered?
Okay,
And
so
then-
you are saying first have the conversation, hey, I'm really looking to try to change our habits, which actually me and my husband have definitely had that conversation. And we do know that what you suggested, which is kind of like taking a pause or a timeout and then coming back to what happened and then talking about it. That's definitely something we often do. And it's a regular thing that we do, which I'm thankful for. But if somebody's never done this with their significant other, your advice is to have the conversation first. Hey, I'm looking to try to change this about our relationship. Are you willing?
Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely. Like I like to be really real, and this can like maybe trigger some people, but like I believe that if you need a couple things for me to have a successful relationship. You need to have each individual needs to be whole in themselves. They're not needy of each other. So if you need your partner to complete you, you're literally saying that you're coming from lack. So you need to be whole, love who you are. You don't need your partner. You're happy being single because you love who you are and you've got an abundant life. So you both people on that level to get started. Second is the vision. And this comes to this point. What's the vision for your life, including your relationship? The intimacy, the communication, the experiences, the parenting, the health, the whatever is important to you. And then this is the key question. Are you both willing to become the people worthy of that vision? Because if you were, you'd already have it, right? So right now, your level of consciousness, skill sets, emotional health, communication is not at a level that is worthy of the vision. So then when you do the work with each other and you hold each other accountable, you heal through each other's stuff, you're just working on yourselves to become the people worthy of the vision. So then as long as you've got that conversation, you're both whole, you love who each other are, you connect with each other, you meet each other's needs in the relationship, you have the vision of where you want to go, and you're both willing to work together through challenging and supporting each other to become people that are worthy of that vision. Once that sort of like that conversation's been had, because literally you might say like, I want to have a relationship where we have kids. And if some person says, I never want kids, I can wrap that one up, get someone else, like you've got the wrong relationship, right? And then it's like, okay, I want to have beautiful, balanced conversations where we can be real and open and vulnerable with each other. And if they're not aligned with that, then you've got the wrong person. And then it's like, okay, well then are we both willing to work on ourselves? And what does that look like? It looks like we're going to trigger each other, honey. I'm going to push your buttons. You're going to push mine. What's our expectations on how we handle that when it does arise? Then when you've got that, then it'll be a bit easier for that role play we were doing, because if we already have it, it might sound something like, honey, look, thank you so much for being honest and real with me. Just to hold you accountable, you really snapped at me just then. Was that needed? It wasn't, right? Like, I'm learning, I'm working on this because I told you I want to and I'm going to. I'm not perfect. So thank you for the accountability. But do you really need to react the way that you reacted? Was that me or was that you? That was you, right? So I'm going to be better. I'm going to fix this up right now. But let's work on this together in a healthier way. Is that okay?
I mean,
done.
If my husband reacted to me just like you did, that would be amazing. So, good goals. And on that, Lewis, you kind of seem like you've got it all together, to be honest. I know you've struggled in the past. I know you've struggled in the past, about like 7 years ago when you had your 3 gyms and you worked very hard to get where you are today. To be honest, though, you're kind of giving the rest of the male population a lot to live up to. For the sake of all other men out there, can you please share with us one current struggle or trigger that you are working through now or have recently overcome?
I love that, because on my podcast, my last question is, what are you working on personally that the world doesn't get to see? That's the question that I ask. So I think for me, I've signed up to a Reiki healer. I've never done Reiki healing, energy healing, for anyone that does that, because I've come from, my background was very shy, unconfident, didn't really believe in myself. That was a lot of my wounds and stuff I've worked on. And anxiety was like my favorite flavor of suffering. So I was very anxious young boy, and I still have like a lot of sensitivity with my body. So I had a bit of indigestion one day from a meal. I ate too much food, and my partner said, oh, would you like a massage? I can massage your stomach and help maybe move it around. I'm like, oh yeah, awesome, please. And she started doing it. I was just like really jittery. I was like really sensitive to it. And my partner, who's a very energetic, beautiful woman, she's like, you've got a lot of stored energy in your body. I'm like, you're fucking right. You're right. So, and I'm like, where's that coming from? And I couldn't find it. I've got a very conscious way of healing and balancing. That's the way I coach, but I'm not an energy healer by any means. So I was like, I want to dive into that. And for me, that shows up in the bedroom, having confidence in the bedroom intimately with my partner, being certain with who it is that I am. I've got a lot of certainty in some areas, but some areas I'm not so strong. When it comes to being present with my partner, I'm always thinking of work and business and helping people. So learning to switch off is something that's been a growth opportunity for me lately. Healing my confidence in who I am from that wounded boy that was inside of me. That's been a lot of my focus lately. Whenever I'm at any given period of my life, I kind of do a bit of both. I'm working on my professional life, which is like sales, marketing, the business itself, and then it's like personally growing. And my personal growth right now, I've got a Reiki healer. I do a lot of meditation. I'm just exploring my triggers. I'm exploring, where am I not free? Where have I got resistance? Where have I got things that I haven't processed yet, which come from my dad, which come from my mum, and the volatility I had in my upbringing and the bullying that I experienced when I was younger. So yeah, probably confidence in myself, when it comes to just being who I am as a man in my relationship, because I'm very confident in my career. That's probably something I'm still working on, to be real with you. And yeah, just exploring myself from an energetic body, from all the sensitivity in my body. That's why I've signed up to a Reiki healer to do that. Had my first session last week. Yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Beautiful share. Thank you for being so vulnerable and letting our listeners know that you are indeed human.
I am a human. That is correct.
Yes. All right. So, Lewis, thank you so much for coming today and being an amazing guest. Before we go, can you please share with the audience where they can connect with you?
Beautiful. Thank you for your time. This has been a beautiful conversation with someone who's very conscious yourself, and you've done a lot of work, which is beautiful. So Lewis Huckstep across the board. Instagram, I'm most active. I do a lot of the messages myself. I respond to everyone myself. So if you want to chat there, check me out there. I do have a website, but it's really shit right now, so don't check out the website. I need to get it redone. But yeah, Lewis Huckstep on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. But yeah, Instagram's definitely number one if you want to chat to me there.
Perfect. And I can vouch for that. He did respond to me personally, so it is true. Thank you, awesome. Lewis.
Thank you.
I love that the divine has brought Lewis and I together on this day to talk about some real struggles that all of us indeed endure, probably throughout our daily lives in some way or another. I do believe that this is how you plant seeds of hope for ourselves, our personal relationships, and the collective. Thank you, listeners, for the simple act of tuning in and listening with an open heart and open mind. By doing so, you are spreading seeds of hope, love, and transformation. And so it is.